I was probably around 7 or 8 years old when this happened, maybe second or third grade. Most of my memories from back then are blurry, but this one stuck with me, and by the time I finish, you'll understand why. It was just a regular school day, except it had been pouring rain since morning. One of those relentless, heavy storms that seemed to weigh down the entire sky. My parents picked me up like usual, but they had to attend some fancy event that night, maybe a fundraiser or a dinner party. I don't remember exactly. They left me at home alone, promising to be back later that evening. But the storm got worse, to the point that driving became dangerous, so they decided to stay overnight at a friend's house nearby. I remember them calling the landline. This was before I had a phone, and apologizing over and over again. They felt terrible for leaving me alone, but I was honestly excited. I had the whole house to myself. No bedtime, no veggies, and all the candy I could eat. Before hanging up, my mom gave me a checklist. Lock the doors and windows, keep one light on, close all the blinds, basic safety stuff. I told her I'd do it before bed, but really, I planned on staying up as long as possible, watching TV downstairs until I passed out. At some point, I must have crashed on the couch with candy wrappers all around me, the TV still playing, which of course I did. I don't know what time I woke up, but the TV had gone to sleep mode, meaning at least a few hours had passed. What hit me first was the cold. It felt way colder than it should have, like something was wrong with the air itself. Still half asleep, I remembered my mom's list and realized I hadn't done any of it. She always knew everything. Even as a kid, I knew she'd somehow find out. So I pulled myself off the couch and went through the house doing everything she said, locked the front and back doors, closed the blinds, checked the windows, made sure everything was sealed. I even touched the glass on a couple windows to see if they were cracked open, but they weren't. Still, the house felt off. I tried telling myself it was probably the heater going out because of the storm, and I was too tired to care. I just wanted to get upstairs and crawl into bed. But the moment I stepped into my bedroom, I realized just how intense the storm had become. Our living room sits in the middle of the house, so downstairs I didn't really hear how bad it was. But my room had a big window facing outside, and it sounded like the rain was trying to shatter the glass. Lightning flashed every few minutes, followed by thunder that felt like it shook the entire house. I wasn't the type of kid who was afraid of storms, but that night was different. I lay in bed trying to sleep, but instead of the storm keeping me up, it was something else. There were these weird creaking noises, like old wood shifting, but my floor was carpeted, and I wasn't moving. At first, I figured maybe it was the trees swaying in the wind, but the sound didn't match. It was subtle, wrong, and too close. Something was in my room. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe loud. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to see what might be looking back at me. After a while, it started to really bug me. So I sat up, trying to focus. Another flash of lightning lit up my room, and everything looked normal ... except for the closet. The door was cracked open. I knew I had closed it. I was absolutely sure. Something had moved. I just slowly slipped out of bed, my heart pounding, and walked to the door as silently as I could. That short walk felt like a lifetime. I made it to the hallway and rushed downstairs, crawling under the dining table, trying to make myself as small as possible. That's when the fear really hit me. and I started crying. Not loudly, just quiet, choked sobs. It clanged against the floor, and my heart nearly exploded. I was a little kid, and I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what to do, and then I heard it. Footsteps on the stairs, but they weren't normal footsteps. They didn't pick up the wrench. It sounded like someone stumbling, like they were bouncing off the walls or taking weird lunging steps. They got closer, heading toward the dining room. I held my breath. Then I saw them, just the feet. Bare, muddy, yellowish legs covered in cuts and scrapes, like they'd walked through a field of thorns. They were wobbling, barely able to stay standing. And then they dropped something, a wrench. If they bent down to pick it up, they'd see me for sure. I didn't move a muscle. I just watched with wide eyes. But the person didn't move. They just stood there, motionless. And then finally, they turned and stumbled away, wandering around the house. I heard them moving for what felt like forever, and then the front door creaked open and slammed shut. They were gone. I stayed hidden under that table for what felt like hours, too terrified to move, too shaken to think straight. Part of me wanted to run, to get out of the house completely, but the rest of me, probably the smarter part, was frozen in place. I couldn't process what had just happened. I was still so young, but I knew enough to understand how close I'd come to something terrible. Eventually, after what must have been at least half an hour, maybe more, I slowly crawled out from under the table. My knees were stiff, my throat sore from holding back tears, but I forced myself to move. I picked up the wrench first, partly because I didn't want my parents to find it and ask questions, but also because I didn't want to leave it there as a reminder of whatever had just happened. I checked the front door again. It was locked now, though I didn't remember hearing it lock. That alone sent another chill through me. I tiptoed upstairs, still half expecting to hear more footsteps behind me. But the house was dead silent now, and the cold that had crept in earlier was finally beginning to lift. Back in my room, I climbed into bed without changing, without brushing my teeth, without doing anything except pulling the covers all the way up over my head, like that flimsy blanket could somehow protect me. I didn't sleep much. Just lay there staring at the closet, now fully shut again, watching it like it might open any second. And you'd think I'd run to my parents the second they came home the next day, right? But I didn't. I didn't say a word. Something about the whole thing made me feel like it was my fault, like I'd done something wrong by forgetting to lock the doors earlier, by falling asleep on the couch, by not following my mom's checklist. I was terrified they'd be angry, or worse, disappointed. So I buried it. I buried the whole experience deep inside and pretended it never happened. Years went by before I ever talked about it. When I finally told my parents, well into my teenage years, it took a lot of convincing for them to even believe me. It sounds unreal, like something out of a nightmare. I don't blame them, but I know what I saw. I know what I heard, and I know how that night changed me. After that, I couldn't sleep without a nightlight. I hated the dark, hated closets, hated being alone in the house at night. That fear clung to me through most of my childhood. I became obsessed with checking locks, with making sure everything was shut and secure. And even now, as an adult, I still double-check doors before bed, sometimes 3 or 4 times, just to be sure. It's like something rewired in me that night. A part of my brain never fully relaxed again. I never found out who that person was or how they got inside. Nothing was missing. No police report. No follow-up, just a wrench. Just muddy footprints that I cleaned up in silence. And the truth is, I never got answers. There was no forced entry. Just a sickening gut-level knowledge that something had been in my home while I was alone and defenseless. And to this day, I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't woken up. If I hadn't noticed the cold. If I hadn't checked the doors. Or worse, if I hadn't seen the closet door open when that lightning flashed. Would they have stayed hidden until I was asleep again? Would I have woken up to someone standing over me? I'll never know, and maybe that's for the best. But what I do know, what I learned the hard way, is that even one unlocked door can be an invitation. And even the safest, most familiar home can feel like a stranger's place when you realize something else has been inside. From that night on, I never forgot to lock the doors again. I'm an only child, and I live with both my parents at a house that is honestly a little too big for just the three of us. My parents always joked that they meant to have more kids, but just never got around to it. Anyway, by the time this next experience happened, I was 15. It was one of those rainy Saturday nights in late May, right before the start of summer break, and I remember it clearly because I hadn't been able to sleep at all. See, I've always had a bunch of weird health issues. I get panic attacks out of nowhere. Sometimes I faint, and I've got trouble breathing when I'm stressed. On top of all that, I need absolute silence to fall asleep. Even the low hum of a fan is enough to keep me awake. I mean total, dead silence. So when it rains, especially those heavy, endless downpours, it's a nightmare. Everyone else says rain helps them sleep, but for me, it's the opposite. It just amps up my anxiety and keeps my brain racing. That night, the rain wasn't quite a thunderstorm, but it was coming down hard enough to fill the air with constant noise. I lay in bed for hours, tossing and turning, knowing I wasn't going to sleep. So eventually, I gave up and got out of bed. I figured I needed to burn some energy. That's when I decided to go for a walk. I know that sounds weird, but late night walks in the rain had actually become something of a coping mechanism for me. We live in a safe neighborhood, and there's this huge public park that wraps around the side of our property. It's well lit, wide open, and just peaceful enough to make me feel like I could breathe. My parents knew I did this sometimes, and they were fine with it as long as I stayed close. I also purposely left my phone behind. I slipped on my rain jacket and headed out the back door. Didn't even bring an umbrella. I knew if I had it with me, I'd end up scrolling for hours and never wind down. The moment I stepped outside, I felt better. The trees swayed gently under the rain. The street was empty, and everything had this strange, calming glow to it. I walked for a while, probably 20 minutes, just pacing around the perimeter of the park, listening to the rain. Eventually, I felt myself getting tired finally, so I turned around to head back. Someone was lying face down in the middle of the road. I was walking along one of the park paths that cut close to the road when I noticed something strange lying in the middle of the street. At first, I thought it was a trash bag or maybe a pile of soaked clothing, but as I got closer, I realized it wasn't an object. It was a person. My stomach dropped. My first instinct was that they'd been hit by a car, maybe just moments ago, and were seriously hurt, or even dead. I could see more clearly now. They were wearing black pants and a dark flannel shirt, completely soaked through. Why else would someone be lying there like that in the pouring rain? Everything in me told me to just turn around and walk away, to not get involved. But my conscience kicked in. My parents raised me better than that. If someone needed help, I couldn't just pretend I didn't see them. Not even a twitch. So hesitantly, I started walking toward the figure. It looked like a man, though I couldn't be totally sure at that distance. The weird part was, he wasn't moving at all. My breathing sped up, and I started to question everything. The rain kept hammering down, and just as I stepped off the sidewalk, I heard this sharp, awful screech behind me, like a howl, but warped. It sounded like an injured animal, almost human, but not quite. He was sitting up, perfectly straight, and he was staring directly at me. I couldn't breathe. My heart jumped, and I instinctively spun around, scanning the trees. Nothing. The sound had come from somewhere deeper in the park, past the tree line, but I didn't see anyone or anything. Still, my nerves were shot. But when I turned back toward the street, my blood went cold. The man wasn't lying down anymore. It felt like the world narrowed into a tunnel, and the only thing I could see was that man's face through the haze of rain. Then, before I could move, he stood up and started sprinting toward me, full speed. His eyes locked on mine, peering around the tree, trying to catch any glimpse of movement, but there was nothing. And in his hand, he was holding what looked like a kitchen knife. Every shadow felt like a threat. Just the sound of rain dripping from the leaves. That's when my legs finally reacted. I turned and bolted, running as fast as I could in the opposite direction. I heard him yell something behind me. "I'll kill you." His voice manic and shrill. The grass was slick and muddy, and I kept slipping, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I didn't want to lead him back to my house, so I turned and sprinted toward the trees, deeper into the park, even though part of me remembered that awful screech came from that same direction. That inhuman screech I heard right before everything happened. I didn't care. I just needed to disappear. I ducked between trees, brush whipping at my arms and legs, lungs burning, rain soaking through my clothes. I didn't know if he was still chasing me, and I didn't dare look back. I just kept running. Eventually, I reached a thicker part of the woods and collapsed behind a tree, gasping for breath, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it over the rain. I waited and waited. No footsteps, no rustling. After maybe 20 minutes, I finally stood up and began making my way home, taking the long way, circling around the backside of the park so I wouldn't risk being seen. Every step felt like a gamble, but somehow I made it. I slipped back into my house, dripping wet, heart still racing, and collapsed onto my bed. No one ever found out. No police came. No news reports about some guy attacking a teen in the park. I never even found out who that man was, or if he'd actually been lying there waiting for someone, or if I just got extremely unlucky. But the thing that haunts me the most, I don't know if the man and the sound were connected, or if the scream just startled him and made him react. But that sound, raw, primal, not quite human, it still shows up in my dreams sometimes. It's the part of the night that keeps me from writing it off as just some crazy person. Because even now, I still wonder if what I encountered that night was something more than just human. I still live in that same house, and sometimes, on rainy nights, I lie awake and listen, just in case.